Prince William's world collapsed when he stumbled upon a locked file in King Charles's private study. Inside, a letter dated 1997, just weeks after Diana's death, ordering palace aides to hide his mother's journal, tapes, and notes meant for her sons. William, now 43, wept as he realized the truth had been buried by his own father. It wasn't the press, it wasn't outsiders. It was family. And now, with Diana's lost voice finally in his hands, the prince faces a choice that could shake the monarchy itself. The moment everything changed. It began with a locked drawer in King Charles's private study at Highgrove House, a room Prince William rarely entered. But on a quiet afternoon in August 2025, he noticed the drawer slightly ajar. Inside was an envelope marked Confidential, 1997. It was brittle with age, its corners curling, the ink fading. But the message was unmistakably fresh and personal. William opened it and froze. What he found inside wasn't just paperwork. It was the moment that would break the prince and change everything. The letter was in his father's handwriting, dated just 2 weeks after Princess Diana's funeral in September 1997. It gave strict orders to palace aides: hide all sensitive personal materials belonging to Diana. Listed on a second page were 3 items William had never seen or heard about: her personal journal, a series of cassette tapes, and handwritten notes meant specifically for her sons. William sat motionless. The room, once familiar, now felt like a stranger's lie. Sources close to the royal household say William stayed in the room for over an hour, holding the letter silent. When he finally stood, there were tears. He reportedly whispered, "She tried to reach me." For 27 years, he had believed everything he was told about that dark time in 1997. But now, he had evidence that his father, King Charles III, had kept part of Diana locked away. Not by accident, on purpose. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. That day, William didn't just lose trust. He lost the version of his childhood he'd always known. The pain wasn't only about what had been hidden, but why. The father he'd tried to understand for so many years had made a decision that changed the course of his healing. And in that moment, in that study, William wasn't the heir to the throne. He was just a son, undone by a father's secret. In royal circles, silence is often survival. But for William, silence now felt like betrayal. That old envelope wasn't just paper. It was a confession. And when he read what Charles had written inside, the trust shattered. The letter that shattered trust. The letter, dated 22nd September 1997, was just 1 page long. But every word cut deep. In it, Charles instructed that materials of emotional volatility be withheld from both William and Harry. He emphasized his concern for their stability, stating that tapes, diaries, and notes left by Diana were to remain under lock and key. He called them damaging, but William knew better. They weren't damaging, they were hers, and they were meant for her boys. Charles didn't just suggest this, he ordered it. Palace aides were to act in full discretion, even if it meant overriding Diana's known intentions. That meant the journal, those cassette tapes, and her final letters never reached William or Harry. One chilling sentence read, "They are too young to carry her pain." But as William read it in 2025, he felt something else entirely. Not protection. Control. Not love. Fear. Sources say William stared at that sentence for 10 minutes, reading it again and again. He wasn't a teenager anymore. He was 43 years old, a husband, a father, and the future king. And yet, in that moment, he felt 13 again. A boy denied his mother's truth. The betrayal didn't come from the press. It didn't come from the public. It came from inside the palace, from the person he'd spent years defending in silence, his own father. William's fury didn't erupt loudly. Insiders say it was quiet, deadly, a cold, numbing realization. The letter was more than a decision. It was evidence. Evidence that the most human parts of Diana were buried beneath royal image management. Diana's voice was muted, her heart hidden, her warnings silenced. And the person who ordered it was now wearing the crown. But what was so dangerous that it had to be buried? What did Diana record that Charles feared so deeply? The answer lay in those missing pieces, the ones she left behind for her sons. The voice she recorded, just in case she never got to say goodbye. Diana's lost voice. The cassette tapes, according to insiders, were recorded in early 1996, during Diana's most vulnerable moments. She sat alone in her Kensington Palace apartment, often late at night, speaking into a small recorder. On the tapes, she spoke directly to William and Harry, telling them stories, expressing fears, sharing love, and offering warnings. One tape began with her whispering, "If you're hearing this, something happened to me." She spoke of her loneliness, her struggles, and her isolation inside the royal walls. She feared that the same emotional prison would trap William and Harry. She begged them, "Don't let the crown decide who you are." The tapes weren't explosive. They were intimate, painful, raw. Diana cried. She laughed. She dreamed aloud about a future where her sons would be free. But she knew the danger too. "They'll try to erase me," she warned. "Don't let them." The journal, found alongside the tapes, was just as haunting. Written between 1995 and 1997, its pages told of nights she stayed up listening to her sons breathe, fearing what the future held. One line read, "William tells me I'm sad. I tell him I'm tired. But the truth is, I'm scared." She worried the monarchy would take their innocence, their freedom, even their memories of her. She wrote, "The machine feeds itself. Don't let it feed on them." These weren't the words of a bitter woman. They were the final hopes of a mother. Diana had poured her soul into those tapes and pages, believing they would reach her sons one day. But that day never came. Not in 1997. Not in 2007. Not in 2017. Only now, in 2025, were her sons finally hearing the truth. And for William, it wasn't just about memory. It was about what could have been. But the truth couldn't stay buried forever. And once William had the tapes and journal in his hands, there was only one place he could turn: to the man who kept them hidden. The confrontation. It didn't take long. Within 48 hours of discovering the letter, Prince William asked for a private meeting with King Charles III. The setting, Clarence House, London, on a rainy Tuesday evening in September 2025. No aides, no notes, just father and son. William, described by insiders as pale but steady, asked one question. "Why didn't you trust me with this?" The silence that followed was heavier than any thunder rolling outside the palace walls. Charles tried to frame it as protection. He insisted that back in 1997, William and Harry were too young. His exact words, according to a source, "I was shielding you from her pain." But William, now a father of 3 children himself, didn't accept it. The pain wasn't Diana's, it was his, and the years of separation from her voice could never be returned. That single justification felt more like betrayal than compassion. The discussion didn't stay calm for long. Voices rose. Reports say Charles grew defensive, accusing William of reopening wounds better left closed. But William's reply cut sharp. "They were never yours to close." That line, one aide revealed, brought the room to a standstill. A son, no longer deferential, no longer restrained, staring directly into the eyes of the monarch who had rewritten his grief. After just 1 hour, William left. His eyes were red, his fists clenched. That night, in his own home, William stayed up until sunrise, reading Diana's journal, cover to cover. He reportedly wept, laughed, and whispered her words aloud. For the first time since 1997, he felt as though he had her back. But with every page, the question grew louder. If his father could hide this, what else was buried? From that night forward, William wasn't the same. Friends noticed the change immediately. The prince, who once carried quiet resilience, now looked haunted, like a man who had just lost his mother, all over again. A son torn in two. Those close to William say the days after his discovery were some of the darkest since August 1997. He cancelled 2 royal engagements in October 2025 without explanation. Courtiers quietly said he needed rest, but insiders described a man paralyzed by grief. At home, Kate Middleton found him sitting in silence for hours. One night, she overheard him murmur, "She was trying to reach me." It wasn't just grief, it was betrayal, raw, corrosive, and consuming. For years, William had built his public loyalty to King Charles, protecting his father's fragile image. He endured decades of Camilla's rise, reshaping public opinion, standing by even when whispers of betrayal resurfaced. But this time, the wound was different. It wasn't scandal from the outside. It was family. It was deliberate. It was his father. Insiders claim William grew short-tempered. He avoided friends, even stopped answering Harry's occasional texts. At night, he replayed Diana's tapes, listening to her voice echo across nearly 30 years. She spoke of courage, freedom, love, and fear. Each time she said his name, William felt both lifted and crushed. Lifted by her love, crushed by the years lost to silence. Kate, worried, urged him to talk, but William remained withdrawn. Those who saw him at public events in late September 2025 described his smile as strained, his eyes distant. He was present, but not whole. It was as if the boy who walked behind Diana's coffin at age 15 had returned, older, stronger, but still broken. And yet, as William sank into grief, one question grew louder in whispers around the palace. Why had Charles buried Diana's words in the first place? The answer lay in the contents themselves. What Diana had dared to record. What was Charles really hiding? The contents of the tapes and journal were not harmless memories. They were explosive truths. Diana spoke openly of betrayal, isolation, and the monarchy's cruelty. In one 1996 recording, she described Charles never truly leaving Camilla Parker Bowles. She called herself a disposable ornament to the crown. Her voice was fragile, but her words sharp. "The marriage was over before it began," she confessed. She also wrote in the journal, dated March 1997, of her fears for William and Harry. "The system," she warned, "will eat them alive if they let it." She begged her boys to hold on to their identities before the crown tells you who to be. These weren't just emotional notes. They were indictments of the monarchy itself, its coldness, its control, its suffocating grip. For Charles, these words weren't only about Diana. They were about him. If they had reached William and Harry in their teens, they could have reshaped how the boys saw their father, the monarchy, even the line of succession. One source close to the palace whispered, Charles feared history would brand him the villain, and he wasn't willing to take that risk. That fear may have driven his decision to bury them for 27 years. But time has a way of resurfacing truths. And now, with William holding the evidence, the old fears Charles once buried were alive again. The tapes didn't just threaten the monarchy's image, they threatened to tear open the story of Diana, Charles, and Camilla all over again. And this time, William wasn't a boy. He was a man with a choice. With the truth finally in his hands, William opened Diana's journal once more. This time, it wasn't grief that filled him. It was something else. Awakening. Her words weren't just memories. They were instructions. And they were written for him. The journal unlocked. When William opened Diana's journal again in October 2025, the pages felt alive. Each carried her perfume, faint but unmistakable. One entry, dated May 1996, recounted William as a little boy telling her, "Don't cry, Mummy. I'll be your knight." She wrote that those words gave her strength through nights of despair. For William, reading them almost 3 decades later, it was like hearing her voice across time. The journal went further than memories. In July 1997, just weeks before her tragic accident, Diana wrote, "If I am gone, remind the boys of love before duty. The palace will never put love first." They must. For William, the words cut deep. This wasn't just nostalgia. This was guidance. She had seen the trap ahead and left him a map to escape it. Another passage in 1995 described Diana's fear of Charles's long affair with Camilla. She feared William would be forced to accept a crown built on lies. Reading that in 2025, William's rage mixed with sorrow. He realized the very thing Diana predicted had happened. Camilla wasn't just part of the story. She was queen. And Diana's warnings, silenced for years, now rang true. By the final pages, William's grief began to shift. Sources close to him say he felt more connected to Diana than ever before. Her words weren't just closure, they were fuel. She had given him a mission, to remember who he was before the monarchy told him otherwise. That realization was more powerful than any title, any crown. But the palace didn't share that view. The moment whispers of Diana's journal spread, aides scrambled to contain the fallout. For the institution, this wasn't a family matter. It was a crisis. Panic at the palace. Within 24 hours of William's discovery becoming known among senior staff, Buckingham Palace went into lockdown mode. Meetings stretched into the night. PR advisors drafted statements, but none were released. Their internal motto was simple: do not confirm. Do not deny silence was their shield. But insiders say panic was written on every face. The greatest fear? That Diana's voice, her tapes and journals, would reach the public. Advisors warned that if those recordings emerged, they would ignite fresh anger against King Charles and Queen Camilla. Old wounds from 1997 could reopen. And this time, social media would amplify them to millions in seconds. Hashtags like #LetDianaSpeak and #Justice. For Diana already started appearing online in early October 2025. One extraordinary detail leaked. Palace staff allegedly attempted to retrieve the materials. A quiet request was made for William to securely deposit the tapes and journal into the royal archives. William refused flatly. To him, they weren't artifacts. They were his mother's voice. His exact words, according to one insider, "They belong to me, to us." That standoff deepened the rift between father and son. The palace feared more than scandal. It feared revolution. If William broke ranks and made Diana's voice public, it wouldn't just wound Charles. It could alter how the monarchy was seen for decades. And for the first time in years, aides whispered something they hadn't dared since 1997. What if Diana's sons turned against the crown? And in that silence, William knew there was only one person who deserved to hear Diana's voice, before the world did: his brother. The question was, would Harry listen? Could this reunite the brothers? By mid-October 2025, William made a move no one expected. After months of distance, he reached out to Prince Harry. A short message sent late at night read, "There's something from Mum. I need you to hear it." For Harry, living thousands of miles away in California, those words stopped him cold. He had always spoken about suppressed truths, family secrets. Was this what he'd meant all along? Sources claim William and Harry spoke for over 2 hours on a secure call. William played excerpts of Diana's tapes through the line. For Harry, hearing his mother's voice after nearly 3 decades was devastating. At one point, he reportedly said, "She's speaking like she knew this would happen." For the first time in years, the brothers shared not just blood, but grief. The palace, insiders say, was terrified. A united William and Harry was their nightmare scenario. If both sons stood together, armed with Diana's truth, they could shift public loyalty in a way unseen since 1997. Already, commentators speculated, would Diana's voice bring her sons back together, and against the very system she warned them about? But the reunion was fragile. Trust between the brothers had been shattered for years. William's call wasn't forgiveness, it was necessity. Still, for the first time since the Queen's death in 2022, there was hope. Hope that Diana's voice could do what nothing else had: reunite her sons, but also fear. Because together, William and Harry posed a greater risk to the crown than ever before. And so William stood at a crossroads. He could keep Diana's words locked away, just as Charles had. Or he could let her speak at last, and risk shaking the monarchy to its core. What comes next? By the end of October 2025, the question echoed across the world. Would William release Diana's tapes? The decision wasn't small. Releasing them could spark a storm unlike any in royal history. It could tarnish Charles, destroy Camilla's carefully built image, and even challenge the monarchy's survival. But staying silent would mean betraying Diana all over again. For William, the choice was agonizing. He carried the weight of his role as heir, his duty as father to George, Charlotte, and Louis, and his loyalty to the institution. But above all, he carried Diana's voice in his hands. Friends say he repeated one phrase over and over in private: "If I don't let her speak now, she never will." Public pressure grew daily. By October 28, 2025, hashtags like #LetDianaSpeak trended globally. Supporters gathered outside Kensington Palace, holding photos of Diana, demanding truth. Camilla's approval ratings, already fragile, plummeted. Commentators on major networks warned, if William speaks, it's an earthquake for the monarchy. Yet public sentiment overwhelmingly favored him. People didn't just want Diana's story, they needed it. One palace insider summed it up best. He's not that boy walking behind the casket anymore. He's leading now, and the world is watching, waiting. Diana's voice, silenced for 27 years, is ready to rise. And this time, it will be her son, not the crown, who decides when. The revelation left William with more than grief. It left him with a decision. For 27 years, Diana's voice had been locked away, silenced in the name of protection. But William now knows it wasn't protection. It was control. The journal, the tapes, the letters. They were his mother's final gift, and they had been stolen from him. Now, the weight of that silence falls on his shoulders. What will he do next? Insiders say the tapes are haunting. In one recording from 1996, Diana whispered, "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. Don't let them change you. Remember who you are before the crown tells you who to be." For William, those words weren't just emotional. They were instructions. A roadmap left by a mother who saw the storm before it came. And now, in 2025, that storm has arrived. The palace is terrified. Advisors are scrambling behind the walls of Buckingham Palace, urging silence. Their fear is simple. If Diana's voice is heard, it could reignite the same tidal wave of public sympathy and fury that shook the monarchy in 1997. Charles and Camilla's carefully rebuilt image could collapse overnight. One insider put it plainly, the tapes don't just hurt reputations, they rewrite history. But outside those walls, the world is waiting. Social media has erupted with hashtags like #LetDianaSpeak and #JusticeForDiana, trending in over 20 countries. Crowds are already gathering outside Kensington Palace, holding candles, photos, and signs reading, "Diana never left us." For millions, this isn't just William's battle. It's theirs. Diana belonged to the people, and they believe her voice deserves to be heard. And then, there's Harry. For the first time in months, William reached out across the ocean, letting his brother hear the tapes. Reports say Harry broke down, telling William, "She knew. She always knew." The possibility of Diana's lost voice bringing her sons back together is both heartbreaking and hopeful. But it also terrifies the monarchy. Because if William and Harry unite, standing side by side with Diana's truth, the crown may face a storm it cannot contain. So here we are, a son torn between silence and truth. A mother's voice reaching across nearly 3 decades. A monarchy already weakened by scandal, now facing a reckoning it cannot control. Will William protect the institution? Or honor his mother? Will he choose the silence of duty or the truth of Diana? One palace aide whispered the line that now defines this moment. He's no longer the boy walking behind the coffin. He's the man holding her voice. The world is watching. The choice is his. And Diana is ready to speak.